girls. Life is girls. Life as girls.
Life as girls. We have a lot to say and we hope you're listening.
Hi everyone and welcome back to another episode of Life as Girls. I'm Aubrey, your host. Joining us today is my friend Juliette. We've known each other since elementary school and she transferred to my high school for her senior year. I'm so excited to talk about our high school experience on today's episode. Juliette, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. So we both went to the same middle school, for anybody wondering, and then in 8th grade, that's when we were kind of like deciding where to go to high school. And I know there's like a lot of different options, but you decided to go to a private school, which is it was different from like the school that like our middle school feeds into. So kind of what led to the decision to go to like that private school that you went to and not like our more common school to like feed into?
Well, my brother was, he was applying to private school, so I was like, oh, well, I'll just apply and see what happens. And I ended up getting in, and so I was like, okay, I'll give it a try. If I don't like it, I'll just like transfer out or something.
Right, yeah.
And then COVID actually happened, and so at private school, we were allowed to go in person,
Which is
freshman year.
Yes.
And so I was kind of happy. I was really happy about that because I think it bettered my learning experience. But then I started to realize that I wasn't too happy
Yes.
there.
No, I understand. Like in person is such a good deal. We did like online school, and so that was Zoom meetings.
Yeah.
So I can understand that. And then for getting into this private school, is there anything like applications you had to do or like?
Yeah, we did an application. I had to take their version of like standardized testing.
Okay.
And they like score you based off of your math, English. It's kind of like an SAT, but private school version.
Okay.
And then I also did an interview with the principal and the head of school, and then they decided.
Right. Okay. That seems about right for a private school.
Yeah.
And was like the decision to go to a private school based off like, I know for me it's like I think private schools get more recognition as like prestigious and whatnot. So was that like, oh, it will look better to colleges?
Yeah. So they definitely have a lot more resources.
Right.
Which, like my admissions counselors, they were constantly in connection with like big colleges, and they just knew a lot about the college admissions process, and so that was actually really helpful. I wouldn't say it was like prestigious per se, because the private school that I went to wasn't as prestigious as some of the ones here, but it definitely, I think it did give me an upper hand on like college admissions and like when to start in the whole process.
Definitely. And like I know just choosing a school in general that's right for you, there's so much that goes into it, like sports, extracurriculars and everything. But how would you compare like the structure of this private school? Like now that you've been to a public school, because you have been here since the beginning of senior year, like kind of how does the class structure compare?
I think that there is a lot more one-on-one like personalization to the classes at private school, which I really enjoyed because the teachers were there for you. Like you could go during lunch, you could go before school, you could go after school. As long as you talked to them and told them, hey, I need help, they were basically your personal tutor.
Wow.
Which was really, really helpful, especially in classes that I struggled in. We also had 7 classes a day. Right. And so that's a lot different from the block schedule that I'm at now.
Yes, we have like 4 classes a day, and it's like 8A, B day, which I know is for a lot of schools. But yeah, we do like 4 classes, which is your A day, and then a different 4 classes, which is your B day.
Yeah, we definitely got less done at private school, I would say, because it was only 50-minute classes.
Right.
So we would get into class, we would spend 5 minutes going over what we were going to learn about, and then we basically had 30 minutes, and then we would just learn and then be done with class. And so that's a big difference. I do think that there's a lot more free time at public school, and the teachers sometimes don't really know what to do with all the time.
I so can attest to that. And like I can't speak to like the difference between this and a private school, but like at public school, we have a lot of classes that are known as like blow off classes because they have that reputation where it's like you do nothing in there. You're basically wasting time doing free assignments. So yes, I know exactly what you mean.
And it's also like, I don't know if it's just because I'm a senior now or if it's the difference of public school and private school, but I feel so much more like less motivated. I felt a lot more motivated at private school, and I think it might be because the classes were constantly like go, 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 because you never really got a break.
Right.
And So I felt like it could have been that, or it could be that I'm a senior now.
Or just a little bit of both.
Yeah.
But good that you recognize that.
Yeah.
I'd be like, it's definitely this school. But yeah, it's when you have like an hour and a half to do one class, it's so, especially like math for me or science classes where you're like supposed to be dedicated that whole hour and a half, and you want to
just go on your phone.
Yeah. Absolutely. So then, like, after we've kind of talked about the differences, but actually, like, going and like living through your entire freshman year, kind of how did that compare to what you were expecting in your head, or like what you'd kind of seen about your private school?
Well, I think that, I mean, with COVID, it kind of just changed everything.
Definitely.
Like, I wasn't really knowing what to expect. At my private school, we didn't have uniforms freshman and sophomore year. So we would just wear like jeans, and then we'd have to wear like a polo. And I expected it to be more like actual uniforms.
Yeah. That's like all I hear about private schools is the uniform.
Yeah, I think and then we did eventually go to uniforms my junior year, but I mean, I kind of liked having uniforms, but
yeah, I like that. Well, I like the freedom now, but I can definitely understand that.
Well, it was nice not having to pick out an outfit like every day. You just throw a random shirt and a random skirt and they'd match.
Tell me why that's like my biggest dilemma getting ready in the morning. It's like, what am I going to wear? Yeah. And then also you were saying that like when you kind of went in person your freshman year, actually I should ask this, what was it like meeting friends and everything? Was that like a hard thing for you to meet people and make friends, or was it kind of just came naturally?
I think that it was really hard, especially freshman year, because there was so much political like
differences.
Yeah, there was a lot of political and economic differences, and I was coming from a more like liberal, like open-minded school, and then I was going to this world that I'd never really experienced before, especially with the people and their beliefs and all of that. And it was also a pretty religious school, and I had never really experienced anything like that before. Yeah. And so I was just not prepared for that. And I think that I came in really strong with my beliefs, which you should always be strong in your beliefs, but you also have to have like an understanding of when to stop and
when like not go too far.
Yeah. Like sometimes you kind of have to let your beliefs simmer down a little bit in order to be accepted by certain people. And so I did learn that after my freshman year. I was like, okay, I'll try not to make it political and stuff, but it was hard because people say stuff and you want to like fight back.
Have the urge to defend them.
Exactly. Like, that's not right, but yeah.
So that was, we went to sophomore year of your high school, and that was kind of like you felt you needed to kind of change to fit in, or like, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of molding that private school does to kids, and they're all kind of the same people in different forms. And so I don't know. I've never really liked that. And I kind of like being myself, so.
Absolutely. And like you told me when we were talking earlier that like junior year, sophomore and junior year is kind of that like stage of high school where you kind of noticed that your friend groups were changing, and that was like a hard year for you, like friend wise. So can you kind of talk about like when that happened, or like kind of where that change in your friend group started, maybe what happened that like you guys kind of had a falling out?
Yeah, so sophomore year I kind of started to like open myself up a little bit and like try and make friends, because getting through high school without friends kind of sucks.
Of course, yeah. So true.
So I was just like, okay, I'm gonna try to calm down a little bit, try to make some friends. And I actually did end up making friends at the end of towards the end of my sophomore year.
Yeah.
And at that point, I was actually deciding whether to stay at private school or leave and go to public school for my junior year. And so I had made these friends, and so I was excited, and I was like, oh, okay, I'm gonna stay, because I had a good friend group, I felt supported, and I had like good grades and stuff. And so I was excited. And then at the beginning of junior year, I tried to hang out with them a little bit over the summer, but like we were all so busy, it didn't really work out.
Right.
And then the beginning of junior year, they just kind of like cut me out, and they stopped talking to me. And so I was like, oh, this kind of
sucks.
Yeah. This isn't really cool. And it was really sad, but I also think it helped me become more like academically driven and more like into my studies, because I wasn't worried about all the stuff going on around me. I was just studying. So.
Yes. And so like that's, I think, just really interesting that was your experience. I feel like when people think of like private schools, they're thinking a lot of like, I mean, this is my opinion as well. I'm not sure if it's everybody's opinion, but I always feel that it's like the academics are what's like just the most like rigorous, and it's just really hard to get through like with good grades. And so it's interesting that like for your experience, it's been so much about the friend group. And so like, I mean, I don't want to speak for you, but do you feel like leading to your decision to switch schools that like grades or like the coursework had anything to do with it? Because I feel like a lot of people might think that would lead into a decision.
I do think that private school, you have a lot more opportunity to take harder classes, and the teachers are way more willing to support you because you can completely load your schedule with APs, which is what I did my junior year. Mm-hmm. And I didn't have one elective. And so it was just core classes basically. And all my teachers, like if I was doing bad, they would all come and help me, you know?
Great. Yeah.
And so I think that the academics, they're hard, but you also have a lot of resources that are willing to help you, which is different at public school because you can take hard classes, but they're genuinely hard because you're on your own. You know, yes. Which is what I'm learning.
That's so true. And I from being at a public school like for 4 years, I can say that like my AP classes, like I'm thinking specifically history, but like I had a teacher that it was so like you had to do 80% of the work by yourself. And tutorials at our public school just really doesn't exist. And so you have to really be like struggling or like behind really before they're like going to kind of help you and really focus attention on you individually. And I think that's because there's so many kids that it's just really hard to like give one-on-one support. But really, like truly, the grades can be really hard to maintain at a public school because of that.
Yeah, well, I also definitely saw a difference in the teachers and kind of their like happiness at work in a way.
Yeah.
I don't know if very many people know this, but at private school, teachers actually get paid less than they do at public school. Yeah. So a lot of them were at private school because they got to express their religious beliefs. But it felt like they were happier and they wanted to go to work and they had more personal connections with the students. And then going to public school, it's just different. Like
totally. Yeah, it really is.
Because they're overwhelmed by the amount of students. They're not really getting support, and there's a lot of...
And I think you're really lucky to, like, if you're at a public school and you have a good teacher, that's really not common. So it's really just, you take advantage of that.
Yeah.
Because unfortunately, in, like, my experience, I've had more teachers that seem like they weren't really fully engaged into the class, and I've had teachers that were just really excited to teach.
Yeah.
And I'm sad that that's anyone's experience. And it's also, like, upsetting to hear that, like, you're losing a friend group well, this is very exciting, but losing a friend group can be so much of your high school experiences, your friends, and it's who you're hanging out with. And it's just like who you get to talk to and like making meaningful connections. And so it's also just really hard to be at a school where like you're feeling not supported.
Yeah, well, you like see people and you're like, oh, like I want to be like them. Like I want to hang out with my friends and stuff. And then it's like, it's hard to go to school every day and not talk to anyone, you know, because that's so much of what school is. Like you're around all these kids and then you want to talk to them. But I mean, I'm a little nervous for college too because I don't know
how it compares.
Yeah, how it's gonna work out. I mean, I guess we'll see.
Yeah, we definitely. And so like I think that kind of leads into the next question, which is like, what ultimately made you decide that like you just didn't want to be at that private school anymore? That like public school. I'm not saying public school in general, but this particular school was a better fit for you. Like, kind of what led to that?
I just think it was a lot of my friends and the fact that I'm probably going to be out of state next year for college. And I mean, I think I got a lot out of private school. At the time, I didn't really see it, but now looking back at it, I do think I got a lot out of it. But I was just ready to move on. And I think it's important to understand when you're ready to move on. So
yes, like knowing what's a good fit for you.
Yeah. And so I don't know.
No, absolutely. And I think just going off of that, from what I've seen, like for you, everything, like from what you've told me about private school is it might not be that the classes are hard. It could be that really the classes are a great fit for you. The teachers are a great fit for you. But if like everything might look perfect and it still might not be a good fit for you. And that's like at your own decision, and it can be hard to make that choice. But I mean, hopefully, do you think you've made the right choice? Like, do you think that was...
I do. It was also hard, though, because I felt like I was getting a lot of resistance from people when I was like, oh, I want to transfer out my senior year.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like, well, why do that, you know?
Right.
But I felt like I'd be more fulfilled at public school and with the people that I genuinely like and like being around. And so, yeah.
Yeah, that's great. And like, I love that I feel like people can look at like schools and be like, oh, why wouldn't you stay at somewhere where it's more recognized by a college and like those classes are harder and like your grades are so good and like blah, blah, blah. But if really, like truly, if you don't have a good support group, then that can make all the difference. And I like look back on my high school experience. I'm like, if I did not have my friends, I just don't think it even would have been worth it. Because I don't go to high school and think, I mean, I know this is some people, but I don't go to high school and think, I love learning. I can't wait to learn today. I go to school for my friends. Absolutely.
Yeah, well, people would also tell me, they would be like, if I had that opportunity, like, I would take it. You know, and I was just like, well, you're not really in my position. Like, you don't understand what I'm going through every day, like being ignored by people. And like, yes, I'm getting good grades. Yes, I'm enjoying the teachers and the learning. But a lot of life is social. And I feel like if you lose the ability to be social, it's really hard to get it back. You know, so I was having a hard time with that.
Yeah, totally. And like, I think, for me, it was a very big part of my COVID year was like being online. You didn't talk to anybody.
Yeah.
And so it was like Zoom school. And so I was making zero friends. And I only had like the friends I had since middle school. And so like going sophomore, junior, senior year now, like being with everybody, that helps so much. So like being social was like, I look back on high school and think that was my most memorable experience of high school. Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you went to our school, not only because I get to see you more often, but also because I'm glad that like this is a decision that you came to that was like right for you. But for other people, like I know there's many people that's in that situation where, you know, like they might be in a situation where like everything looks perfect, but really they're just deeply unhappy. So do you have like any advice for them? You have anything you would want to say that they would want to know?
I mean, I would say just like try and figure out who you are, but don't let other people impact you while you're deciding that, because it's really hard to stay true to yourself, and especially when you're trying to constantly fit in. And so if you know, I mean, changing things is scary. Like going to a public school where there's 670 kids in my grade versus a private school where there's 70.
Right.
It's scary, but sometimes you have to just decide to change for the best, you know?
Yes, and I think now that you're kind of senior year, everything's coming to an end. I hope you like look back on that and like you can do it. You know, it was hard, but it was ultimately worth it. And I feel like a lot of people are going to like have to make those tough choices, but like when you can look back on it and think you made the right choice, it's so much easier coming from like where you are now.
Yeah, well, obviously I also didn't really want to regret never going to a public high school when it's all I wanted for like 3 years, you know? So, I mean, I'm glad I made the change.
Yes. Well, me too. So yay, great. I thank you so much for being here. Thank you for talking to me. And thank you everybody for listening on today's episode of Life as Girls. We'll see you next time.
If you enjoyed this episode of Life as Girls, be sure to write a review and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And a big thank you to our sponsor, the Girl Scouts of Central Texas. You can learn more about them at www.gsctx.org. If you are interested in sponsoring this podcast, or if you have a topic you'd like for us to talk about, email us at communications@gsctx.org. See you next time.